1,000 meters above the frigid North Sea, disaster strikes. A helicopter is crippled in the middle of a sudden storm. The pilots struggle for control as it sinks helplessly towards the sea. They're far from land, off the radar screens. No one knows exactly where they are. In the days that follow, investigators search for the truth hidden in this tangled wreck. The cause of the crash shocks those involved and reveals a hidden danger that reaches far beyond the North Sea.
3,000? Here. We're not getting any oxygen. We have the terrain alarm. Aero crew 603. We are in an emergency.
The need for oil drives men to some of the most unpleasant places on Earth. This is one of them. The North Sea divides Britain from mainland Europe. It's a shallow sea, and the cruel winds that race across it can whip up enormous waves. The sea is cold, grey, and violent. But there's oil out here. And so dozens of drilling platforms and thousands of men must face whatever the weather throws at them. The only efficient way to get the men out there is by helicopter. The flights are rough and long, up to 500 kilometers each way. After years, the trip has become largely routine. The danger below forgotten by many.
What was that?
But on a cold January morning in 1995, 18 men flying over the North Sea were faced with a horrible question.
Mayday, mayday, mayday! Tail rotor failure! Ditching!
Could they survive in this extremely hostile environment?
Oh, God! Oh.
January the 19th, 1995. Commander Sed Roberts and First Officer Lionel Sole work for Bristow Helicopters in Aberdeen, Scotland. Their job is to ferry oil workers out to the oil platforms in the North Sea. By mid-morning, they've completed one trip already and are getting ready to head back out. Their helicopter is Super Puma 56 Charlie. While it's being checked out and refueled, Flight Officer Sole checks the flight logs, and Commander Roberts goes through the weather reports, which are updated every 2 hours.
Oh, weather's okay. Good for January.
This is where they're heading, the North Sea. The discovery of oil here in the 1960s was a shot in the arm for the British economy. Brent crude, as the oil is known, is a light, sweet crude, ideal for turning into gasoline. And its price is a benchmark on the international oil market. It helped turn Aberdeen, the Scottish port city closest to the oil rigs, into a boom town, the European oil capital. All the leading oil companies have offices here. The city is focused on getting the black gold ashore. Because the rigs are so far offshore and the weather so unpredictable, helicopters are the only way to reliably ferry workers back and forth. Hundreds of thousands of people make the trip every year. The Super Pumas are one of the workhorses of the North Sea oil industry. Used around the world by industry and military, they're durable, tough, and made to withstand the elements. There are more of these helicopters flying offshore here than anywhere else in the world. The passengers heading to the platforms today gather in the heliport's departure lounge. They all work for the Texas company Marathon Oil. The North Sea has scores of oil fields. They're divided up between several countries, including England and Norway. The governments then sell the rights to drill to a variety of oil companies. Marathon operates 3 platforms in the so-called Bray field: Bray East, Bravo, and Alpha. North Sea oil platforms are like cities that never sleep. They stand on the seabed, held up by enormous legs made of either metal or concrete. Below each one, pipes snake out to the seabed. Some punch straight down, others fanning out at an angle for up to several kilometers. The same platform may be extracting both oil and natural gas at the same time. Out here, you're surrounded by the sea, with nowhere to go. The weather is often horrible, and the work on a rig can be rough, dirty, and dangerous. It's difficult to find and retain the skilled workers needed to pull the oil from the sea, so the platforms are built to keep the workers happy. Movies, internet cafes, gym equipment, even great food are all provided by management to ensure the men are entertained. During 12-hour shifts, workers handle heavy equipment and deal with great heights or great depths. But there are strict rules too. To protect the safety of everyone on board, there's no drinking, and smoking is severely restricted.
Mayday! Explosion fire on the Piper platform. All personnel abandoned.
One of Britain's worst disasters happened in the North Sea oil fields. In 1988, on Occidental Petroleum's Piper Alpha platform, the gas exploded and set fire to oil. A 167 men died. The potential for disaster is never far away. But on this January day, the Marathon oil workers prepare as they always do. All 16 are scheduled to spend 2 weeks on Marathon's Alpha platform, followed by 2 weeks off. To these men, getting to work has become routine. But getting a ticket on this flight calls for something a little out of the ordinary. None of them is permitted to board a helicopter without first going through this: helicopter underwater escape training. Their lives may depend on knowing how to get out of a submerged helicopter or oil rig, and knowing what to do once they find themselves in the chilly North Sea. Several accidents over more than 20 years have driven home the point. Training may help a worker survive. Before they set off on every flight, they must watch the video, how to behave if there's an emergency on your flight.
Brace impact.
They've seen it all 1,000 times.
In an emergency, if time does not permit, just tighten your lap strap and brace for impact. To exit through the windows, pull the red tab to completely remove the rubber seat.
The passengers fasten their survival suits. Made of Gore-Tex, these dry suits won't keep them afloat, but are supposed to keep the water out if the workers are thrown into the sea.
Obstruct the forward windows.
Their bright colors are also designed to make rescue easier. The trip to the Bray Alpha oil platform is 230 kilometers. If all goes well, it will take little more than an hour. Then, 120 miles out, they'll reach an area called the Gate. That's where all the helicopters split up and go their separate ways to the individual oil platforms. Bray Alpha is about 40 kilometers from the Gate. For part of the journey, the radar operators at air traffic control in Aberdeen won't be able to see them.
The reason why we lose low-level radar coverage out over the North Sea is, in essence, because the Earth is round. As a helicopter's flying outbound to an oil rig, it's actually following the curvature of the Earth.
But radar pulses travel in straight lines, which means that as they travel further and further away, a gap opens up between the surface of the Earth and the radar waves.
If an aircraft flies into that gap, then it'll disappear from radar. In the case of Aberdeen, a helicopter operating about 2,000 feet will disappear into that gap at about 80 miles.
It's a black hole, which Super Puma 56 Charlie is now entering. The helicopter and the 18 men on board are over halfway to the rigs, and from this moment on, no one knows exactly where they are. 56 Charlie is a Super Puma helicopter serving the North Sea oil platforms off the coast of Britain. It's halfway through a long flight carrying 16 passengers to the Bray Alpha oil rig. The crew is getting concerned about what they see on their weather radar. The forecast called for scattered clouds, but the weather is changing fast.
What do you think about this cloud?
It's quite thin.
Yeah, but look, we're getting some cumulus too. It's quite small, about 100 yards across.
Yeah, but it's developing a bit.
Cumulus are puffy white clouds like balls of cotton wool. They're beautiful to look at and usually harmless. They only last between 5 and 40 minutes. But helicopter pilots prefer to go above them if possible, because the air inside and below gets very bumpy.
Let's try to climb above it. Go to 5,000 feet.
Right. Oh, look, there's a line of them. All along the route exactly where we're going.
Yeah, we're not gaining anything by this. Let's drop back down to 3,000 feet.
Right.
So far, the weather is nothing to worry about. But over the North Sea, it can change suddenly. This corner of Europe is where the warm winds from the Atlantic meet the icy blasts from the Arctic and Siberia. The warm water vapor condenses into clouds, cools, then sinks. It creates strong winds, pushing the huge masses around. The friction caused by this motion can make the clouds electrically charged, and that electricity can be released as lightning. What starts out as a placid day can end up in a violent storm. It's now 1 hour after takeoff, and 56 Charlie is approaching the gate, the point where helicopters begin their descent to the individual oil platforms. They're 25 miles from their destination, and the weather is starting to get worse.
Bray traffic, 56 Charlie, 120 miles on the 056 HMR.
They make contact with Bray Traffic Watch, located on one of the oil platforms. It handles all the comings and goings of helicopters. But Bray Traffic doesn't have radar. It has to rely on the pilots to tell them where they are.
Leaving 3,000 feet, would you take the flight watch?
Roger, 56 Charlie, I have your flight watch.
Aberdeen information, Bristow's 56 Charlie at 120 miles. Leaving 3,000 feet, Bray has the flight watch.
Roger, 56 Charlie, continue with Bray traffic.
Quite suddenly, the weather has changed. Instead of the harmless fluffy balls of cotton wool, a line of dangerous cumulonimbus clouds is now blocking their path. They rise up like huge white mountains, more than 10,000 meters, far higher than the chopper can fly. Underneath, they're dark and menacing. Pilots try to avoid them at all costs. Inside, gusts of wind can reach up to 100 kilometers an hour. The turbulence can make the flight unpleasant, but that's only part of the danger.
The cumulonimbus, that's the granddaddy of all clouds. It stretches from around about 1,000 feet at its base all the way up to 28, 30,000 feet. They are the most dangerous clouds that aircraft can come across, particularly small aircraft like helicopters. Within a cumulonimbus, you're going to find severe turbulence. You're going to find icing, you're going to find heavy rain, and of course you're going to find lightning. If you're flying a helicopter, that's not where you want to be.
Lightning is one of the most powerful forces of nature. Around the Earth, it strikes an average of 100 times per second, each strike with a power of up to 1 billion volts. Aircraft can't completely avoid it. On average, every passenger jet will be hit once a year by lightning, but the design of the planes helps prevent them being badly damaged. Their bodies are traditionally made of aluminium, which is a good conductor of electricity. The lightning passes harmlessly along the fuselage and exits from the tail. Helicopters use the same type of design to keep safe, and helicopters need it in the North Sea. With such stormy weather and so many helicopters, lightning strikes are inevitable. As they begin their descent, the Super Puma enters the line of clouds that stands in their path.
Bits of cloud coming up here.
It's okay, it's still green. Let's carry on through that.
Green on the weather radar means there's rain, but it's not heavy enough to worry about.
What the pilot sees in that is actually simply like a television screen. On that television screen he has a map, and overlaid on top of that map is a series of banded colours. If there's no rain, he has a blank map. If there's lots of rain and it's heavy, he has lots of red squares on that, and that gives you the idea of the intensity and the location of the rainfall.
On board 5-6 Charlie, the weather gets more intense. They begin to get pelted by hail.
Hey, where'd this come from?
It's coming in through the vent.
It's like being inside a beanbag swamped by polystyrene balls.
It's so thick. How come the engines are still running? There can't be any air left out there.
No.
Now another problem.
We've got a hard over on the ice detector.
It's probably just an ice pellet stuck in the probe.
Right.
The helicopter has an ice detector, a probe outside the craft, which is supposed to tell the pilots whether there's ice on the blades. But they think it's become jammed with ice and is giving a false reading. And then, disaster.
Bloody hell.
What was that?
Lightning, I saw it. Oh, this is bad. There's something very, very wrong with this. We'll have to go down, I'm afraid.
The helicopter has been damaged, but they don't know how badly. The entire body is shaking and vibrating. The crew's first instinct is to get down to a lower altitude in case the worst happens and they fall out of the sky.
Mayday, Mayday, 5-6 Charlie, lightning strike, severe vibration. Mayday, Mayday.
40 kilometers away, another helicopter is about to leave an oil platform. Commander Brian Backhouse is loading passengers onto 5-6 Bravo and preparing to fly back to Aberdeen.
That's everyone. All set.
Suddenly, the loading officer hears Lionel Sol's Mayday call on his radio.
Mayday, Mayday, 5-6 Charlie, lightning strike.
Hear that, Mayday? 56 Charlie! Gentlemen, my apologies, but we have to disembark you. We have an airborne emergency on a sister aircraft.
Backhouse hurriedly unloads his passengers. He intends to help if he can. Meanwhile, a gale is steadily building up, with winds in excess of 70 kilometers an hour. The seas are mounting. The crew of 5-6 Charlie are struggling to keep control of their crippled helicopter. After the initial flash, though, the situation hasn't got worse. The Grampian Freedom is a standby ship positioned near the oil rigs to give oil workers a way to escape if anything goes wrong. Her skipper, John McInnes, hears the helicopter's distress call.
We increased the speed to full speed ahead. Everybody was informed about the vessel and told to get ready for survivors to be taken aboard.
Back on the Bravo platform, what was a routine flight for Brian Backhouse is about to become a rescue mission. He intends to find the stricken helicopter and nurse it to safety. If it crashes into the sea, he'll direct rescue ships to the spot. But they're not sure where to go.
Let's go to the gate and proceed from there.
At least they have a starting point. The Grampian Freedom doesn't know where to go either. They're getting conflicting messages about where 5-6 Charlie is. The helicopter's tiny size and the rough seas make it hard to find. On the damaged helicopter, Commander Roberts briefs the passengers.
Gentlemen, you are obviously aware of the severe vibration. We've had a lightning strike, so please pull up your hoods, zip up your suits, and prepare for a possible ditching.
Countless hours of training is supposed to have prepared all on board for a moment like this. In a real emergency, how many will remember it?
1,200 feet. We're still flying. Let's try to make it to Bray Alpha and land there.
Their destination, the Bray Alpha platform, is now only 11 kilometers away. 3 minutes have passed since the explosion, and things don't seem to be getting any worse.
I'll just try a few small inputs, make sure everything's working. Yes, we've got control in pitch, we've got control in roll, and we've got control in yaw.
Tail rotor!
The helicopter is beginning to spin round, a sure sign that something's happened to the tail rotor. The only thing the pilots can do to stop the spinning is to switch off the main rotor blade.
Power off, engines off.
Ditching has become inevitable. Charlie is falling fast, more than 600 meters a minute, with the main rotor acting like a kind of parachute, the blades being turned only by the air that rushes through them.
Mayday, mayday! Tail rotor failure, ditching. Brace for emergency landing.
At this speed, they're about 40 seconds from hitting the North Sea. The other pilots in 5-6 Bravo are searching in vain. There's no sign of 5-6 Charlie in the sky or in the water. Then they hear another distress call.
Mayday! Mayday! Tail rotor failure! Ditching!
Mayday, mayday, mayday. Relaying for 5-6 Charlie. We have a suspected tail rotor failure. He's ditching.
Commander Backhouse in 5-6 Bravo knows that he is closest to the stricken helicopter. Everything depends on him. But he's not equipped to locate the distress beacon 5-6 Charlie will use when it ditches. All he can do is search mile after mile of grey sea. Back on the Grampian Freedom, the crew begins searching the sea as well as the sky. But they know 5-6 Bravo can cover ground more quickly than the enormous, slow-moving ship. They do what they can and wait for better directions.
Floats, floats, I can't find the floats! I got it! Just keep it at trim angle. Right.
The pilots of 5-6 Charlie are about to attempt one of the most difficult maneuvers, ditching or landing in the middle of the heaving sea. Floats under the helicopter are meant to keep it from sinking. If they're deployed too soon before touchdown, the chopper may lose what little stability it has and topple over. Too late, and they won't inflate completely. Instead of riding the waves, the helicopter will sink below them. There's no second chance. They time it perfectly.
We're down.
Seems quite stable.
They've landed safely, but no one knows if they will stay afloat. Helicopters are top-heavy, and they fear it could keel over and sink at any moment.
Let's get out of here! Do the door!
They need to get the life rafts out, inflate them, and board them quickly. They fear that if the helicopter rolls over, it will trap them all inside.
Lift that end! On the rope!
You go back and help with the evacuation. I'm going to shut things down here. Right. I'm going to try one last Mayday call.
But the evacuation doesn't go smoothly. When they throw out one of the life rafts, the strong wind blows it back against the helicopter. They can't get into it.
Can't get this one down. Can we go on the other side? It's better we all stay together anyway. Off you go! Go on! Go on! Go! Go!
Mayday, mayday!
5-6 Charlie, we are on the water, floating, manning the dinghy.
He doesn't mention their position.
Make room! Get set! Make room!
The raft is dangerously overloaded. There are 18 on board, and it's only meant for 14. Water is already up to their ankles and rising. Once in the raft, they have no way of communicating where they are. For the first time, the pilots are able to see what caused the disaster. The rear rotor blade assembly and gearbox have broken off and are hanging down the side of the helicopter, held on by just a couple of pipes. No one realizes it yet, but in the rush, they've forgotten to bring the distress beacon with them from the helicopter. It sends out a signal that can be picked up by rescuers. Forgetting it could mean the difference between life and death. 2 ropes attach the life raft to the helicopter. They're meant to stop the raft from drifting away, but they'll also drag them down if the helicopter sinks. One of the passengers has a knife.
Shall I cut the line?
No, not yet. We have a better chance of being spotted if we're close to the helicopter.
Problems mount. The passengers are trying to raise the canopy to protect them, but it gets stuck. Without the canopy, they're at the mercy of the waves. And then the helicopter itself becomes a danger. When the doors were jettisoned, they were supposed to be designed to slip down into the water and sink. Instead, one of them, which has a jagged edge, is floating on the surface, and it's heading straight for the raft. The life raft has been punctured by the floating door.
Come on, Bill! Bill, with everything you got, we're gonna sink!
No, don't worry about it. We're not gonna sink.
We've got double-layer rubber tubes here filled with air! It cannot sink! One wave and we're under! No.
The pilots do their best to put on a brave face.
There are other helicopters and ships out there! They know we're down! They heard our Mayday!
The overloaded life raft is getting lower and lower in the water. Inside, it's already waist deep. Now the pounding waves are pushing them beneath the sharp edges of the drooping helicopter blades.
We need to get some distance! We'll have to cut the line!
There are supposed to be 2 safety lines connecting the raft to the helicopter. One short, one long. But the long line is broken.
The long line's been cut! It's been shredded!
You'll have to cut the short one!
The short line is the only thing attaching them to the helicopter. If they cut that, they'll quickly drift away, a tiny raft full of men at the mercy of the sea. But if they don't cut it, the jagged edges of the helicopter could tear their life raft to shreds and sink them all. 18 people have scrambled aboard a life raft after their helicopter crashed into the North Sea. The raft is overloaded. It's been punctured by the jagged metal edges of the helicopter door and is getting lower and lower in the water. They have to get away from the helicopter. Flight Officer Lionel Soule takes the fateful decision and cuts the rope. They begin to drift away into the storm. The conditions are deadly. Most of their survival suits are leaking freezing water. For a person in the water, hypothermia can begin when the temperatures of air and water added together is below 50 degrees centigrade. In the North Sea in winter, the temperature is far below that. Normal muscle and brain functions are quickly affected. The core body temperature will sink, followed by unconsciousness and death. Their chances of rescue are slim. No one knows where they are, just a tiny dot on a vast, turbulent sea.
Quiet! Quiet! I hear something! There's a helicopter!
The men are desperate. This could be their last chance.
Quickly! Pass me those flares! The flares! In the pocket behind you! Spot a flare, you flying bastard! Here it is! We're over here!
But it's all in vain. The helicopter passes by. The men can't believe it. Their only hope is gone. On 5-6 Bravo, Brian Backhouse can see only grey seas. But suddenly, his co-pilot spots something.
Contact. Right. 2 o'clock. Okay, Roger. Let's investigate. Target. Contact.
Target confirmed. 56 Charlie. Stand by for position report.
Like a guardian angel, 5-6 Bravo hovers directly above the survivors for over an hour, directing rescue boats and aircraft towards this tiny speck in the ocean.
He came in and hovered fairly close because he wanted to count the number of people on board the life raft. So for a while he was right over the top of us and blowing us around a bit. But as soon as he had got the information he wanted, he backed off and he was just marking the position for the rescue craft to find us.
First to arrive is the Grampian Freedom.
We had lookouts posted all around the vessel, some on top of the bridge, on each wing of the bridge. A helicopter came and it started crisscrossing our bow, which is not our procedure in that kind of situation.
Almost a mile away from the raft, the Grampian Freedom launches its fast rescue boat. The boat sets off at full speed to the rescue. The rain and waves make finding the raft difficult.
Hey! There's a boat! It's coming! No, don't think us! Relax, boys, they know what they're doing! Let's go! Quickly, go!
The rescue boat throws a lifeline to the stranded men, and they begin pulling themselves to safety. But there's another challenge ahead their training hasn't prepared them for.
We reached the standby boat, and you're looking at the hull, a huge steel hull. You said, I'm never going to get up there. But the crews are well trained. They wait for the swell to go up and down in the right motions.
And they have a large net hanging down the side of the boat. And they said, we're going to come alongside, we'll be on the top of the wave, and when we shout jump, you jump and grab the net. Don't look back, because we'll be gone. We came alongside, high up on the wave, grabbed the net, the wave went back down, they were away, and they pulled off. And we just climbed the last few feet over the side onto the Grampian Freedom.
Later that day, a rescue helicopter winches up 14 of the survivors and flies them back to Aberdeen. 4 of the men, however, never want to travel in a helicopter again, so they refuse to leave the Grampian Freedom. They're in for ever more misery. They're buffeted by a force 10 gale the whole of their long journey back to Aberdeen. Through their skill and against all the odds, Cedric Roberts and Lionel Sole have saved the lives of all on board.
I must admit at the time I did think that was it, we were going to die.
The whole world had changed from being really good to being what I thought was a complete disaster at that time. It was the worst situation I'd ever been in the air, and I was very worried that that was going to be it.
But the day after the accident, they came under suspicion. Their report on what happened starts being questioned.
Lightning, notionally at least, should not affect a very powerful North Sea helicopter.
This is the first time I can recall a lightning strike having ended up with this kind of conclusion.
The experts are skeptical of the pilot's story. No other helicopter is known to have crashed into the North Sea because of lightning. Perhaps there had been some mechanical failure. There were even whispers of pilot error, of recklessly flying into storm clouds. The evidence to support their story was now beneath the waves with 5-6 Charlie. The Air Accident Investigation Branch, Britain's air crash detectives, begins searching for the truth. It may look like a rig, but the stay dive is actually a ship, mostly used for servicing oil platforms. It has 9 powerful engines which keep it stable in almost any weather. And it carries miniature submarines for underwater exploration. A day after the accident, it's brought in to find and raise the missing helicopter from the bottom of the North Sea. The investigation gets off to a good start. Within a day, the television cameras on board the Stay Dive's 2 submersibles locate what's left of 5-6 Charlie on the seabed. But raising it is a different matter. They carry on working into the night. Soon, several pieces of 5-6 Charlie have been recovered, but still not the vital clue, the missing tail rotor. Ed Trimble was the AAIB's lead investigator.
But the big problem was to recover the tail rotor assembly. Without that, the investigation was literally going nowhere. We knew that the tail rotor assembly had been dangling over the side of the pylon as the helicopter had ditched, and it had therefore detached at some point between the ditching and where we had caught up with the main wreckage.
Keeping the stay dive going would cost another £20,000 a day. Ed Trimble rang his boss.
He was fairly skeptical of our chances. He asked what I thought our chances were of finding the tail rotor, and I, being an eternal optimist, I said 80%. To which he replied, I think you'd be very lucky if you've got a 10% chance of recovering the tail rotor assembly in the North Sea.
Ed Trimble stays up all night, relentlessly monitoring the underwater cameras.
I didn't want to be in a situation where we would have missed any evidence of further wreckage, and in particular, any parts of the tail rotor assembly.
Go get yourself a coffee, Eddie.
And by the time 8 o'clock was looming, I decided to go down to the galley to get a coffee. And I couldn't have been away any more than maximum 7 to 10 minutes when I suddenly heard these tremendously excited shouts from our team.
Yes, Eureka, we found it!
As I walked in, I ran in, there, smack in the middle of the screen, was the whole of the tail rotor assembly. And even at the first glance, I could see that one of the tail rotor blades showed clear evidence of a lightning strike.
The crew was right. The submarine's cameras revealed telltale burn marks on the tail rotor blade. A close look at the wreckage on the deck reveals that 2 of the main rotor blades were also struck by lightning. But it's this tail rotor that suffered the most damage. Since lightning is not known to have forced a helicopter to crash into the North Sea before, the question is, why now? Ed Trimble called in lightning expert John Hardwick to discover just what had hit 5-6 Charlie.
What we wanted to do with this set of tests was to take a set of tail rotor blades from the Super Puma helicopter and subject them to varying energy levels of simulated lightning strikes.
The lightning objectives at Culham basically were to try and reproduce the degree of lightning damage in order to identify what kind of level of energy was associated with this particular strike.
This home video of the tests was taken by Ed Trimble. Representatives of the company that makes the Super Puma were there too. Hardwick ran the blade through several lightning strikes until he was able to reproduce the damage found on the rotor blade. To do it, he had to generate a simulated strike of enormous power. Something far more dangerous than anyone thought the helicopter would be exposed to. Something that wasn't supposed to happen over the North Sea.
There have been a few incidents over the years, minor strikes, a little bit of damage to the helicopter, but we never expected anything as severe as happened on that day.
For one brief instant, it was more than all the electrical power being consumed in the entire United States. Some 30 billion watts. And this enormous flash of lightning had happened over the North Sea, where each year almost 3 million passengers fly unsuspecting to the oil platforms.
The helicopters we fly are certified to the highest standards. It's the same as you get on a major airliner flying transatlantic. So we had no reason to believe that any lightning we had encountered would do any severe damage to the helicopter.
Ordinary lightning wouldn't. But this wasn't ordinary.
A lightning strike generates a huge pulse of energy. We can detect these pulses of energy via multiple transmitters and receivers that are situated throughout Europe. The information is calibrated locally, and once the position has been triangulated, that's passed to the Met Office in London.
When the records were examined, they showed something very peculiar. This is what they think happened. Inside cumulonimbus clouds, tiny ice crystals are swept upwards by the wind currents. At the top of the cloud, where it's much colder, they combine with other crystals to form hail. The hail, being heavy, plummets back to Earth. On the way down, it hits the rising water crystals, causing friction. The crystals become electrically charged.
On that particular day, there was very little in the way of indication that there was any significance in these clouds.
We're flying along, everything just seemed very normal. We went through what seemed to us, by comparison to what was around that day, a fairly small cloud. But there was suddenly a lot of snow and ice pellets in the air.
I've never seen as much in the way of soft hail pellets in my whole flying career. And the worrying thing was that immediately we knew that obviously there was a high level of energy in that cloud to produce that amount of soft hail, which also meant there was a high chance of there being lightning there. But by that time it was too late.
When a helicopter enters the cloud, the sharp tips of its whirling rotor blades cut through these crystals, causing more friction, more electricity, until it's all released in a blinding flash. The records showed that the flash which hit 56 Charlie had been the only one recorded over the North Sea that day, caused almost certainly by the helicopter itself. However, for some reason, nearly all the damage had been confined to the tail rotor. What was it about the tail rotor that had made it especially vulnerable? Then Ed Trimble made a remarkable discovery. When the civil aviation authorities certified the Super Puma as safe, they had missed something important, something which may have caused 56 Charlie to fall from the sky. Safety investigators examined the wreckage of a helicopter which crash-landed in the North Sea. As they study the ruined aircraft more closely, they uncover the cause of the accident. When the British Civil Aviation Authority laid down the lightning safety standards, they were looking at fiberglass blades, then the normal material for helicopter rotors. But in the 1980s, plane makers began using the new composite materials, like carbon fiber, which were lighter and stronger. In particular, they began making the rotor blades out of carbon fiber instead of fiberglass. It was assumed that the same standards would apply equally to the new blades. In the industry, that's known as read across, and it's very dangerous. In fact, it was the very design of these composite blades which brought down 56 Charlie. Although made of carbon fiber, composite blades have a metal anti-erosion strip glued on to protect the edge. That's where the trouble starts.
Carbon is a conductor of electricity, but it's 1,000 times worse than aluminium, so you get 1,000 times as much heat produced.
The carbon blade gets very, very hot. And when the current meets the metal strip running along the edge, there is furious arcing and sparking, until finally part of the erosion strip explodes. As little as 100 grams of the erosion strip flew off, but it was enough. Without its weight, the rear rotor was unbalanced. That's what caused the vibration felt on board 56 Charlie immediately after the lightning strike. 3 minutes later, when Lionel Soule tested out the controls, the unbalanced blades put the tail rotor under enormous stress. The bolts holding it on snapped.
We've lost the tail rotor!
Tail rotor's gone!
It was like a blowout in a car, only much, much worse. Things at that point were really very, very worrying. We both knew what had happened. We'd lost the tail rotor. And if you don't do exactly the right thing at that point, your life expectancy is very short. It's seconds. We had to do the right thing. We managed to point it into wind, and there was quite a big sea building up. And at 100 feet, I pulled back on the stick to flare the helicopter, slow down its rate of descent, and we were very fortunate at that point. A nice friendly wave came along, and as I leveled the helicopter, a wave came up. We sat on the top of it, and we went down, and it was one of the best landings I've ever done, but that was luck more than judgment.
As bad as it was, it could have been worse. The two hydraulic pipes connecting the assembly to the helicopter did not break.
These two small diameter pipes had held the mass of the gearbox and tail rotor assembly dangling over the right side of the pylon.
Without the weight of the rotor assembly, the helicopter would have tipped forward.
Had that tail rotor gearbox and tail rotor assembly completely separated from the helicopter, then all 18 lives would have been lost because the helicopter would have pitched down irrecoverably and gone into the North Sea.
The investigators found the answer to the mystery of a helicopter crash, but they stumbled across a bigger problem, one that affects every air traveler. Investigators believe that 5-6 Charlie's violent end was caused by a savage lightning strike greater than anything it was built to withstand. And when the lightning hit, it exposed a problem in the carbon fiber blades that made them vulnerable. The tremendous heat created where the carbon fiber met the metal erosion strip could occur again. And the same type of violent reaction could hypothetically take place in any aircraft that has carbon fiber mixed with other materials. Increasingly, aluminium is being replaced with carbon fiber. The world's largest plane, the A380 Airbus, for instance, has over 20%. What will happen if these planes encounter a monster lightning strike? This was the investigators' biggest concern arising out of this Super Puma accident. The findings were unexpected and treated with some skepticism. Though the tests indicated that an unexpectedly large lightning strike hit 5-6 Charlie, Britain's Civil Aviation Authority refused to accept it. No action was taken to increase the safety standards that these helicopters must meet.
I thought that the reaction was poor. There seemed to be a real reluctance on their behalf to accept the evidence.
If Britain's air crash detectives are right, there is a real concern facing air travelers. Flashes of lightning far greater than aircraft are supposed to encounter are possible. And aircraft made of newer composite materials are at increased risk. For the Super Puma, though, the lessons have been learned. The design of the rotor blades has been vastly strengthened. The erosion strips are now secured with heavy bolts, and pilots have been instructed to give storm clouds a wider berth. The men who must fly these machines to work are prepared to accept the risks.
Well, I think the morning we ditched, we were very, very fortunate because the outcome could have gone horribly wrong. But we survived, we got home. My feelings of that morning was this could never happen to me. Now, when I fly in a chopper, especially in the winter time, if it's going to be buffed about with wind, I sometimes get in the back of your mind, this can't happen to me again. But we've all a choice. We've all a choice either to stop or we carry on. And I'm still there 25 years later, still learning a living.
The crash of 5-6 Charlie was a hair-raising incident that could so easily have ended in tragedy. In the winter of 1995, the skill of Commander Ced Roberts and Flight Officer Lionel Soule saved the lives of their 16 passengers. Roberts and Soule receive an award for their work. The Guild of Air Pilots and Air Navigators recognized their skill and bravery in the emergency landing.
Although we received a number of awards after the incident from various organisations, one thing I received, which is far more precious to me than any of them, was from the daughters of one of my passengers. It was this little card. It says, "Dear Captain Roberts, I can't tell you how much I need to thank you after you saved my dad's life. It took a lot of effort to try to keep calm while you were falling. If you hadn't have got that helicopter in control, my dad maybe wouldn't be here today. Thank you very, very, very much."
Boeing 767 cruises high above the Atlantic Ocean on its way to Egypt. 217 people are on board. Just half an hour after takeoff, disaster strikes. The pilot and co-pilot struggle desperately for control of their aircraft. The lives of all on board will depend on these two pilots and what they do about this dive towards the ocean.
We're not getting any oxygen. We have the terrain alarm. Aero Peru 603. We are in an emergency.
The John F. Kennedy International Airport outside New York City is one of the busiest airports in the world. In 1999, nearly 32 million passengers fly in and out. More than 340,000 flights take off and land. EgyptAir Flight 990 is destined to be one of the most controversial ever to leave this airport. The fate of this flight challenges the strength of an international friendship between two allies and uncovers a hidden mechanical flaw in one of the world's most popular airliners. The FBI will become involved.
We reviewed surveillance tapes to indicate whether or not anything unusual was loaded on that plane.
Investigators in two countries developed two different theories. Was this a tragic accident or a terrible crime? Just after 1 a.m. on October the 31st, 1999, the 217 people on board EgyptAir Flight 990 are waiting for takeoff. The flight's command captain is Captain Ahmed El-Habashi. He's been with EgyptAir for 36 years. The command first officer is 36-year-old Adel Anwar. He switched duty with another co-pilot so he could return home in time for his wedding.
Soon be a married man.
Congratulations, Adel.
Thank you very much.
The airline's chief pilot for the Boeing 767, Captain Hatem Rushdie, joins them in the cockpit. At 1:20 in the morning, First Officer Adel Anwar is going through his takeoff clearance with air traffic control.
Following gateway, clear for takeoff, runway 22 right, EgyptAir 990 heavy.
Cabin crew advised.
In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. Cabin crew, takeoff position.
After an everyday blessing, the co-pilot assists the takeoff. For safety, both pilots push the throttles. On a flight of 10 hours, it's standard practice at EgyptAir to provide a relief crew to share the flying duties. The command crew takes off and lands. The relief crew flies the middle portion. Tonight, Captain Raouf Nur el-Din and First Officer Gamil el-Batouti are the relief crew. They will take over after the first 3 or 4 hours and fly the plane until shortly before Cairo.
V1, rotate. Positive rate of climb, both sides. 1,000.
EgyptAir 990 heavy, contact, departure now, 125.7.
1257, bye.
A large number of passengers are senior citizens from the United States, looking forward to touring the wonders of ancient Egypt.
My dad and Ginny were married in 1998 on October 23rd. And to celebrate their first anniversary, they decided to take a trip to Egypt.
Anita Child's parents are retired and on their way to Egypt as well.
They always had great time on these tours. They traveled frequently, and so it was a pleasure trip they were looking forward to, seeing the Holy Land especially.
Maureen Sacratini and her brother John Simmermeyer enjoyed the fact that their parents loved to travel.
They had been particularly fond of a program known as Elder Hostel, and this particular vacation trip to visit the pyramids and the other historical sites in Egypt was an Elder Hostel trip.
There are 14 of EgyptAir's experienced crew operating the flight. There are also 33 Egyptian military officers and pilots on board, returning after training with the American Armed Forces. Gamil El-Batouti used to be an Egyptian Air Force flight instructor. He's now one of the oldest first officers at EgyptAir. He's so much older than the other co-pilots that out of respect they call him Captain. But some at EgyptAir think that Captain El-Batouti has been coasting too long on the favors of old friends. Just over 20 minutes after takeoff, El-Batouti is about to leave his seat. Former National Transportation Safety Board investigator Greg Phillips became an expert on the events of this flight.
The relief first officer, who would have been expected to come to the cockpit somewhere during the later part of the flight, halfway or wherever he was comfortable, wherever the normal change would have been, came into the cockpit about 20 minutes after takeoff.
Hello, Jimmy. How are you?
How are you, sir?
What's news?
I slept, I swear. Just wait. Let me tell you something. I'm not going to sleep at all. I might come sit for 2 hours
But
and then...
I slept. I slept.
You mean you're not going to get up? You will get up. Go and take some rest and come back.
You should have told me this. You should have told me this, Captain Gamal. You should have said, Adele...
Did I even see you?
I will work first. Just leave me a message.
The younger first officer seems surprised that El-Batouti wants to replace him so early in the flight.
And I'm not sleepy. So you take your time sleeping, and when you wake up, whenever you wake up, you come back, Captain, okay?
I'll come either way.
Captain.
Come and work the last few hours and that's all?
It's not like that. That's not the point. Look, if you want to sit here, there's no problem.
I'll come back to you. I'll go get something to eat and come back, all right?
Fine, fine. Look here. Why don't you go... Why don't they bring your dinner to you here, and then I'll go sleep, okay?
That's good.
Okay, with your permission, Captain.
And with that, El-Batouti leaves to get his meal.
Do you see how he does whatever he pleases?
Do you know why that is?
Captain El-Habashi senses his first officer's resentment and tries to smooth over the situation.
Are you a youngster?
Anwar wonders if El-Batouti wants to take over because he may not want to work with Relief Captain Noor el-Din.
Doesn't he want to work with Raouf, or what?
It's possible, God knows. But look, you shouldn't get upset, right? By this prophet, he's just talking nonsense. That's it.
Everything's under control.
Okay, Chief.
Thanks a day.
First Officer Anwar concedes and is ready to hand over to El-Batouti. Normally, this is the most relaxed, easy part of a long flight for pilots and passengers alike. The highly automated aircraft systems will take care of the flying for several hours.
It's very unusual for an airplane flying over the Atlantic at nighttime to encounter any kind of difficulties. We normally expect accidents to happen at approach or landing or near airports, and very seldom do we get anything out over the ocean in the middle of the night.
Excuse me, Jimmy, while I take a quick trip to the toilet.
Go ahead, please.
Before it gets crowded, while they're still eating, I'll be back to you.
Before the captain returns, disaster will strike EgyptAir Flight 990. The fate of everyone on board will be in the hands of the co-pilot, the man who shouldn't be here in the first place. On a Boeing 767 bound for Cairo, EgyptAir's Flight 990 appears to be cruising smoothly over the Atlantic. The relief first officer Gamil El-Batouti is alone in the cockpit, while the captain has gone to the washroom. But then the plane dips, plunging down. The nose pitches down, creating zero-G, weightlessness, throughout the aircraft.
This airplane basically started at 1G, which is what we'd expect for level cruise flight. As you push the nose down, as if you would be cresting the top of a hill in a car at a high speed that drops away, you'd feel the airplane fall away from you. and you would start to feel a little light in the seat, and as the dive progressed, you would feel a little bit lighter yet.
I rely on God.
Whatever the first officer is intending, he says nothing except this phrase again and again. Captain El Habashi fights the disorientation of zero gravity, desperately trying to return to the cockpit. An American journalist living in France studied this flight extensively.
16 seconds after the dive began, when the airplane had gone into zero G and into negative G and was at an extreme angle, the captain somehow made his way back into the cockpit. How he did that physically, I will never know.
Warning signals indicate the dive is exceeding the maximum speed allowed for the plane, taking them to 99% of the speed of sound. This far past the plane's design limits, the stresses on the airframe are pulling it apart.
What's happening?
Captain El Habashi pulls back hard on his control column. Then he tries to use the engines to power their way out of the dive by pushing forward on the throttles, but he gets nothing.
What? You shut off the engines? Oh, God.
Desperate, the captain deploys the speed brakes, panels standing up from the wings, in an effort to slow the dive. The dive is slowing, back from the brink of the sound barrier. The dive goes on, but the nose is coming up. In just seconds, they go from 0 G to double the force of gravity. Captain El Habashi struggles to level the plane and pulls back hard on the control column. The 767's dive begins to slow.
Who would be? You shut off the engine, Paul!
In seconds, the engines stop and the power goes off, plunging the aircraft into darkness. Here, the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder stop. No one knows what happened in the plane during the next 2 minutes, but radar tracks its path. The plane is climbing again. Up from about 5,000 meters to over 7,500 meters as the aircraft structure is weakened by the stresses of abnormal speeds and maneuvers. Then the aircraft falls into another terrifying dive. Stressed beyond endurance, the left engine is ripped from the plane.
EgyptAir 990, New York Center. EgyptAir 990, if you copy...
At 1:52 a.m., Flight 990 disappears from radar screens, crashing into the surface of the Atlantic Ocean, some 100 kilometers off the American coast. Coast Guard search and rescue get a call at 2:15 a.m. A plane has disappeared, and Coast Guard vessels are called to the scene. The U.S. Merchant Marine training vessel King's Pointer is first to arrive.
Just as the day was dawning, we noticed oil in the water. And that was the first indication, so we turned the ship around back into the oil, and about as soon as we turned around, we started seeing debris rise up to the surface.
In Heliopolis, a Cairo suburb, Captain El Habashi's daughter can only guess what her father went through.
Can you imagine if you have a beloved one, a father, a daughter, or a brother, facing all the horrors of finding himself falling from 36,000 feet suddenly, trying to save his life, his colleagues' lives, the people, the passengers.
In a home in Maryland, a sleepy Sunday morning takes a tragic turn.
I had woken up for some reason at 5:30 in the morning, and we were flipping on the TV to check the weather, and we were deciding what mass we were going to be going to. It was Sunday. And immediately on CNN, they had Flight 990 missing, and I was in total shock. I ran down to my refrigerator where I had my parents' itinerary, and I ripped it off and just started sobbing uncontrollably. I was screaming. I didn't know what to do.
We located a significant debris field, and that we have concentrated our search efforts since then on about a 36 square mile of area, about 50 miles south of Nantucket.
At the end of October, the waters of the North Atlantic are so cold that normal life expectancy is about 5 to 6 hours. In Cairo, Relief Captain Raouf Nur el-Din's daughter May clung to hope for her father.
I was talking to myself, trying to convince myself that my father was not on this plane. And if he's on this plane, he will be safe, because my father was an Air Force pilot. He had a very good experience. And I thought maybe if the plane crashed, he will be able to, you know, to be in a safe place and to swim and to go to any land.
At the crash site, all that's left is pieces. Within hours, authorities know there's little hope for survivors.
We believe at this point that it is in everyone's best interest to no longer expect that we will find survivors in this case.
Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak reaches out to a stricken nation. This is the worst air crash in Egypt's history.
Really, I was shocked. It's a big tragedy for us. And I give my condolences to all the passengers, to the families of the crews who have been lost in this tragedy. And I have contact with President Clinton and other agencies. And he's giving good support for trying to find, investigate, see what was the reason.
The American president would answer his ally with a commitment.
And I spoke earlier with President Mubarak of Egypt today to express my condolences and to assure him that we would be working together closely until this matter is resolved. We do not know what caused this tragedy.
In northern Indiana, music historian Jim Brokaw learned what happened to his father and stepmother.
One of the many things that I felt on that first horrible morning was the sense that people all over the world were confronting the same horrible circumstances that I was, and had the same sense of helplessness and disorientation that I did.
Shocked and grieving, relatives arrive at Newport, Rhode Island. They will seek answers and share comfort. There were 100 Americans, 89 Egyptians, 21 Canadians, and 7 victims of other nationalities on board. They're all asking, what caused this tragedy? Teams of investigators will pursue that question for years to come.
We are beginning what may be a long investigation, and we are prepared to do what it takes to find the answers to the questions we are seeking.
In Washington, Greg Phillips from the National Transportation Safety Board leads the investigation into this crash.
From the very beginning, we realized it was a very difficult case. The airplane was in cruise, nighttime, out over the ocean, and when it went into the ocean, there was just a little bit of floating debris, but we had to recover the airplane from the bottom of the ocean to begin the investigation.
The job of finding the black boxes would be difficult. The water is about 70 meters deep, and the tremendous force of the crash has smashed the locator beacons off the boxes.
In this case, both the underwater locators, which are called pingers, which help us locate the boxes underwater, were detached. So we had an extra difficult job in trying to find the actual boxes where the recording material was contained.
9 days after the crash, the US Navy's unmanned submarine Deep Drone recovers the first of the 2 black boxes, the flight data recorder, which stores information about what the aircraft and its systems were doing. 4 days later, the second black box, the cockpit voice recorder, lands on the deck and is carefully transported to the NTSB laboratories. The cockpit voice recorder captures all sounds in the cockpit for the last 30 minutes of the flight. The black boxes are protected to withstand impacts of 3,400 times the force of gravity. The recovery of the cockpit voice recorder provided a gripping and bewildering picture of the last minutes of a disaster. Here, investigators hope, is the key to unlock the mystery of Flight 990. Translating the Arabic spoken in the cockpit is a top priority at NTSB headquarters.
The cockpit voice recorder was good quality. It was easily usable and translatable by the investigation team. The cockpit voice recorder is always just a piece of the investigation that fits many other pieces of a puzzle. It goes along with flight data, recorded data, examination of the wreckage, and all the other aspects of an investigation.
On major investigations like the crash of EgyptAir 990, the NTSB works routinely with the FBI. The physical evidence has to be managed in case it's needed in court. Former FBI Assistant Director Lou Shaliro is a veteran investigator and no stranger to air crashes.
By the time EgyptAir occurred, we were fairly adept at looking at airline disasters, particularly with the view of developing whether or not a terrorist incident or a criminal act had occurred.
The FBI checked for evidence of bombs, terrorists, or terrorist targets on the flight.
Trying to determine luggage against the passenger list and whether or not there was anything unusual in the manifest, whether or not the people that loaded the plane could recall anything that would have caused them concern. We reviewed surveillance tapes to indicate whether or not anything unusual was loaded on that plane. We had no evidence at all of any explosive device on board EgyptAir that night.
At the NTSB, American investigators found no fault in the aircraft from studying the flight data recorder. But Egypt's members of the investigation team insisted that not all the evidence was in. Much of the wreckage was still in storage on Rhode Island. They hope the cause of the crash can be found here. Egypt's representatives search for any possible mechanical cause for the crash. While they search, other theories are pursued. A study into the causes of airline crashes published in January 2001 points to pilot error as the cause of 1/3 of these accidents. It also finds a strong connection between bad weather and pilot error. But the crash of EgyptAir 990 occurred in clear weather with veteran pilots. What happened in the cockpit would divide the investigation and fuel an international controversy.
I'm good.
October 1999, EgyptAir Flight 990 crashes into the Atlantic Ocean, killing all 217 people on board. The investigation develops in two directions: fault in the airplane and pilot action. Rumors swirl about what or who may have caused this terrible crash. One of the key questions: why was the relief first officer in the cockpit hours earlier than expected? He was supposed to replace Adel Anwar much later in the flight. But in Cairo, Adel Anwar's older brother Tarak has no problem with Adel being replaced in the cockpit.
Suppose I am with one of my friends and we are traveling in a car and he asks me if he can drive instead of me. Is this going to be a problem? For example, if Adel didn't get enough sleep and Captain Jamil told him, "Let me fly the plane instead of you and you go rest," there is no problem with that.
When the actions in the cockpit are put together with the voices recorded, a timeline emerges that indicates a series of initially bewildering decisions.
I'll be back to you.
The timeline reveals that after Captain El Habashi leaves the cockpit, there's a series of sounds whose meaning can only be guessed at.
Control it.
And then the relief first officer disconnects the autopilot.
I rely on God.
Released from the autopilot's control, the plane starts to descend, rolling to the left. Egypt's experts described El Batuti's decision to shut off the autopilot as a possible reaction to an unusual movement of the aircraft, prompting him to take manual control. However, the leader of the NTSB investigation disagrees.
We found no reason for the autopilot to be disconnected by a fault or failure in the airplane.
Normally, all aircraft movements are meant to keep passengers comfortable, as though they were on the ground. After switching off the autopilot, El Battuti pushes his control column forward, lowering the elevator panels. So the flight data recorder indicates to the NTSB. Then he pulls the throttles back, reducing engine power. This causes the plane to dive. Egypt's investigators say El Battuti was not trying to crash the plane, and there may have been an elevator failure which he could not overcome. Strangely, there is no discussion of a problem on the cockpit tape. When the captain made his way back to the cockpit, he asked the first officer what was going on and never received a response. As former director of aviation safety, Bernard Loeb oversaw all air crash investigations at the NTSB.
It is well understood that in a cockpit, a jet transport cockpit of virtually any airline in the world, when a captain comes in and asks a question, the first officer will respond. When the captain asked his questions, Battuti did not respond.
Fighting the dive, pulling his column back all the way, the captain cannot gain complete control of the elevator, so he tries the throttles to power out of the dive. He was unaware that seconds earlier the first officer had shut off the fuel to the engines. Egypt's experts say that El Battuti may have been acting out of caution. The flight data show that a low oil pressure warning appeared. That can mean the engines have flamed out. The captain may have then ordered the fuel to the engines shut off as part of the procedure for restarting the engines.
Shut the engines! It's shut!
The NTSB consider this possible scenario as well.
The engines shut off on a two-engine airplane at night over the water. We couldn't understand any reason why any emergency could cause you to shut all the power off available to the airplane when you're heading away from the nearest airport.
Foremost among the Egyptian investigators' scenarios was a tragic elevator failure. In Washington, at the National Transportation Safety Board, analysis of the flight data recorder indicates that Captain El-Habashi was pulling back on his column to make the plane climb, while First Officer El Battuti appears to be pushing forward on his column, making the plane go down. Elevators work simply. Pull back on the column and the elevators go up, lifting the plane. Push forward and the elevator panels move down to make the plane descend. They work together, but in this case they're going in opposite directions. Egypt's experts argued that this crash could have been caused by a failure in the elevator assembly, producing an elevator hardover, a jam in the elevator controls which lock them in the down position, plunging the aircraft into an uncontrollable dive. They stated that First Officer El Battuti was working to regain control of the elevators and added that he and Captain El-Habashi were working together. If there had been an elevator failure, it could explain the first officer's unusual performance in the cockpit.
Pull!
Supporting evidence is found when analyzing fragments of the wreckage in the hangar at Rhode Island. Here, investigators made a remarkable discovery: 3 unusually sheared rivets. These tiny parts play an important role in the Boeing 767 elevator assembly. Egypt's consulting experts determined that the scratches in the metal surfaces of these rivets showed that they were sheared off in 2 different directions. One direction could be attributed to the crash. The second could indicate that the break occurred before the crash, and so may have indicated a jam in the elevators. Egypt's experts drew this to the attention of the Federal Aviation Administration, America's civil aviation regulator. Alarmed by the potential risks, the FAA ordered all bell crank rivets to be inspected on every Boeing 767 in operation around the world. The inspections uncovered 136 sheared rivets, and 34 aircraft were grounded until the fault was fixed. the FAA said the problem could result in loss of controllability of the airplane. Egypt's investigators had uncovered a credible-sounding scenario, that the sheared rivets in the elevator assembly of the Boeing 767 indicated a jam that could have caused an elevator hardover that the pilots could not overcome. NTSB investigator Greg Phillips disagreed.
Those are by design for the Boeing 767. The controls can be split. They're designed that way in case one of the surfaces, the control surfaces, fails, so that whoever is still in control of the airplane or can control the airplane with a failed elevator.
Before he became an investigative writer, William Langewiescher was a commercial airline pilot. Flight 990's maneuvers are programmed into a flight simulator in order for Langewiescher to test a pilot's reactions.
To see an airplane going so wildly into a dive, to see the altimeters unwinding at that speed, to hear the horns and warning signals going off, is frightening.
Whatever the cause of the dive, Langewiescher tries a variety of responses to recover from it.
Finally, they asked me to wait at the extreme 15 seconds. To sit in a 767 or any airplane going out of control and do nothing for 15 seconds. 15 seconds is a long time. It's inconceivable, but I did it. And even at 15 seconds, even waiting 15 seconds, I was able, through no particular skill, really reacting as almost as any student pilot would, to recover the airplane, recover from the dive, before the airplane exceeded its limits.
No Boeing 767 has suffered from an elevator hardover and dive before or since the crash. The aviation experts hired by Egypt developed a wide range of scenarios, citing a fault in the elevator assembly as a possible cause of the crash.
Based on the data, the information we have from the testing that was done as a group effort with all the best thinking everybody had at the time, we could not make this airplane do what it did with any of the failure scenarios that were presented to us.
While mechanical failure scenarios were exhausted and terrorism was excluded, the FBI continued to dig into the life of First Officer Gamil El-Batouti. Less than 3 weeks after the disaster, news media report that in the final moments before the crash, El-Batouti said, "I have made my decision. I put my faith in God," causing many to believe he might be an Islamic militant bent on destruction. But the translation was incorrect.
From our initial review of Batouti's background, he was a fairly religious person, but I don't think we had anything to determine that his religious beliefs were radical or beyond what would have been a normal religious person.
What had Batouti said, and what does it mean? Egyptian professor Amin Bonar teaches Arabic at Georgetown University in Washington.
Tawakkaltu means I depend, I rely, I trust, and Allah on, and Allah is God. Tawakkaltu ala Allah, on God I rely, I depend in whatever I'm going to be embarking on. People use it when they start a trip, when they start driving, going back home, you say Tawakkaltu ala Allah. When you have an exam, you begin by saying Tawakkaltu ala Allah. It's a very positive phrase. So it's not the kind of phrase that anyone would be using before they commit a crime or before they commit suicide. Tawakkaltu ala Allah.
To say this common phrase once was normal, but El-Batouti repeated it 11 times.
What's happening? Tawakkaltu ala Allah.
I expect that Captain Batouti would say, there is a fire in the engines, something stopped, I can see something's hitting the plane, anything like that. But he go on endlessly saying, Tawakkaltu ala Allah. This is not logic.
For the El-Batouti family, their grief would be compounded by the need to defend their father's honor.
When he died, the one thing we had to reassure us was that he had died honorably. And now they're trying to take that away from us.
There is a lot of mechanical failures. Why you have only to say that it's a deliberate act, no mechanical, no weather, no mechanical, no weather. So why? Because he's an Egyptian pilot.
Chairman Jim Hall allowed that it could have been a criminal act rather than an accident. The investigation could end up in the hands of the FBI alone.
It is only prudent for the National Transportation Safety Board to consult with these experts and officials to fully evaluate this information prior to any final decision on whether the responsibility for this investigation should transfer to the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Egypt's President Hosni Mubarak, formerly commander of the Egyptian Air Force, had known Gamil el-Batouti, according to his nephew Walid. Mubarak asked President Bill Clinton to intercede to keep the crash from becoming an FBI matter. Since the crash, Walid el-Batouti, nephew of Gamil, has become the el-Batouti family spokesman.
You have to understand that the highest ranking in this country, which is the Egyptian president, was an Air Force pilot. And he was asked, and he says, according to my experience, it's in the tail unit. Something happened there. It's not suicide. It could be either a mechanical failure, a manufacturing failure, something.
In America, the FBI focuses on Gamil el-Batouti and the question of motive. The FBI would learn about the man in control of EgyptAir 990, interviewing colleagues and friends, discovering a dark side to Gamil el-Batouti. Investigating the cause of the crash of EgyptAir 990, the spotlight falls on the character and history of Relief First Officer Gamil el-Batouti.
He was 59 years old, approaching 60, had never risen above the rank of first officer. That may have caused him some animosity towards EgyptAir. Had some personal issues in his own life, in terms of financial, some issues in terms of his family members being sick, needing medical attention.
They've used the daughter in the accusation as they said she was sick, and that's why maybe he committed suicide. Before we go to this, I will give you the reason. First, the doctors have already, on that particular flight, have already told them that your daughter is going positive with the medication and everything is going fine, and he was extremely happy. He was so excited to come back.
Gamil el-Batouti was bringing her medical records back that night, among other things.
Okay, he bought tires for his son, and an argument went on the phone between him and his son.
My father called me to come to the airport because he could not carry all 4 tires himself.
He says, listen, I carry your tires all the way from the States. You don't want to come and carry it from the airport? It's a very natural thing. A man is going to commit suicide. Why would he do this?
In New York, the FBI continued their investigation at the Hotel Pennsylvania, where EgyptAir had a block booking of about 50 rooms for their crews.
The investigation that the FBI was able to do, as far as Batouti's background, probably spanned a period of about a year or so, at least from the records that we were able to obtain, and from the interviews we did at the various places that he stayed. So he did have, I think, a propensity to engage in behavior with some of the hotel people in terms of sexual misconduct.
Hey, pretty lady, where did you get to?
Which, you know, at the time really appeared to be totally out of the realm of what was normal for a person of that status to do.
A husband and father of 5, Gamil el-Batouti was notorious for leering at and bothering female guests and hotel staff.
Come to my room.
The FBI learned that 2 years before the crash, 2 young women reported that he called them on their hotel room phone, telling them to look out the window across the courtyard.
You have a good time too.
When they did, they saw el-Batouti exposing himself and reported the incident to hotel security. His provocative behavior would continue. A hotel maid told the FBI that the night before the crash of EgyptAir 990, el-Batouti had sexually harassed her again.
No, I want to talk to you because look, I give you $100 if you just come to my room.
I'm not here for that.
Oh, sure.
I'm here to work. Just leave me alone.
Nah, don't be like that.
When the maid reported the approach, Another addition was made to the hotel's record of sexual harassment of guests and staff by El Batouti.
The allegation of the hotel, as far as they said, it happened way before, not one day before the flight. Not one day before the flight, as has been mentioned.
The hotel maid told the FBI the incident took place on October the 29th, 1999, the day before the flight. 3 months after the FBI began investigating El Batouti, an EgyptAir flight landed in London. The plane's captain requested political asylum in the United Kingdom. He claimed to have information about the cause of the crash of EgyptAir 990, and he feared reprisals in Egypt. Captain Hamdi Taha was a colleague of Gamil El Batouti, and he was walking away from his wife, his family, and his country. The FBI sent a special agent, and along with a British security officer, he interviewed Captain Taha.
Were you aware of El Batouti displaying sexually inappropriate behavior?
Yes. This is very important. I heard it from pilots who I trust. Batouti got into trouble for sexual misbehavior in New York with maids and following women and so on. The airline tolerated this for a while, and they told him several times, maybe you can get away with this normally, but this is America. You represent our country. You cannot do these things.
Captain Taha's information was second-hand, but his description of El Batouti meeting with the airline's chief pilot was intriguing.
Khatem Rushdie went to see Batouti the night they took Flight 990. They had a meeting in a hotel. He told him that what he had done could not be covered up, and something had to be done. The flight back to Cairo from New York would be his last flight.
We go back many years together. But this will be your last flight to the United States.
He would not be flying to America anymore. Batouti had just had these big privileges taken away from him, and he was humiliated. So, I think that what happened was this. He must have said to himself, if this is going to be my last flight, it will be Khatem Rushdie's last flight also.
Certainly within various corporations where people bring weapons into the office and attempt to take revenge against people that they feel have aggrieved them. Perhaps Batouti felt that EgyptAir had been the cause of some of his issues, and unfortunately in this case it was the kind of office that was flying at 33,000 feet.
The FBI provides Taha's interviews to the NTSB. Egyptian officials asked for another EgyptAir pilot to be interviewed. Mohammed Badrawi had known El Batouti for 40 years. Interviewed at the NTSB, he described discussing with Captain Rushdie what to do about El Batouti's behavior.
Do you know if Khatem Rushdie was aware of the situation with Batouti?
Well, of course he knew. But he pretended not to know, I think, because Khatem Rushdie is the chief pilot.
Badrawi confirms that Khatem Rushdie is upset about El Batouti's harassment of women at the hotel. So Badrawi takes Rushdie's concerns to his old friend.
And if he didn't listen to you, what did you tell him was going to happen?
Nothing much, really. You see, he was on his way out. We don't normally touch people when they're approaching 60.
I know. I'm not saying that you are doing something wrong. They are saying that you're doing something wrong.
I know you are my friend.
We have a little patience, and then they're out.
Badrawi would ask Rushdie to be patient with his old friend, considering that El Batouti only had 3 months to go before retirement.
We have been in the Air Force for 40 years. All he needs is a few more months.
Badrawi's interview confirmed that Rushdie did believe El Batouti's behavior had to be dealt with, and he denied Taha's claim of a meeting between the two on the night of the crash. But Captain Taha was not done. He had another compelling story to add. In London, an Egyptian pilot has requested political asylum and is offering an insider's view of the most controversial tragedy in the history of EgyptAir. Captain Tahar revealed to the FBI how EgyptAir briefed its pilots about the crash.
When they had done the transcripts of the cockpit voice recorder, the EgyptAir Chief of Operations called all flight crew to a special meeting in Cairo and told us the facts. Just the facts. No commentary. No explanation of any technical problem. He did not say anything, but all we pilots realized that this was not an accident. And then he told us not to talk to anyone about it. Don't talk to your family. Don't talk on the phone. Don't talk to each other, he told us. All of us realized that Batuti had done this on purpose.
For the American families involved, this was a case of 216 murders and 1 suicide. In Egypt, big, close, extended families combine with a strong religious faith to deny that Egyptians commit suicide.
The story has many sides. It has to do with religion. It has to do with beliefs. It has to do with the culture. I think until today, still in the Egyptian culture, people don't believe that Muslims or that Egyptians or that people coming from that culture commit suicide.
Cultural differences were not the only impediments to this investigation.
One of the difficulties that we did have was that when we went over to Egypt and attempted to really get into his background, it became a very sensitive issue for the Egyptian government.
FBI efforts to learn about El Batuti's personal life and family relations would be stymied.
It became almost to the point where we were never really able to develop all the things that we needed to get at.
Finally, on March the 21st, 2002, after a nearly $10 million investigation over 2 years and 5 months, the NTSB publishes its report and determines that
the probable cause of the EgyptAir Flight 990 accident is the airplane's departure from normal cruise flight and subsequent impact with the Atlantic Ocean as a result of the Relief First Officer's flight control inputs.
The Egyptian Civil Aviation Authority responded angrily, and their response read in part,
It is obvious that the NTSB has not done the type of professional accident investigation expected by the Egyptian government.
The NTSB's former director of aviation safety takes exception to the Egyptian view.
What was unprofessional was the insistence by the Egyptians in the face of irrefutable evidence to anyone who knows anything about investigating airplane accidents and who knows anything about aerodynamics in airplanes, was the fact that this airplane was intentionally flown into the ocean. No scenario that the Egyptians came up with, or that we came up with, in which there were some sort of mechanical failure in the elevator control system would either match the flight profile or was a situation in which the airplane was not recoverable.
Like many of his countrymen, the loyal nephew cannot believe his uncle Gamil was a mass murderer.
This is a simple plane crash. It was put and made like this for no reason. It shows that it's a cover-up.
Greg Phillips takes pride in having thoroughly investigated every lead and every scenario.
When we sign on to be accident investigators, we do it with the idea that we're going to keep the next one from happening, not to cover up one that did because of whatever reason may be given to us. I've never known that to happen. I've never even known it to come close to happening.
There continue to be differing perspectives on the crash of EgyptAir Flight 990, and unanswered questions remain for broken and damaged families. For many of them, answers to how and why this plane crashed will forever be a painful mystery.